As creatives, freelancers, and agency owners, our number one challenge is staying relevant. How can we effectively create work that goes beyond standing out and actually sets trends? And how can we apply our own personal taste to our work in ways that sustain us through a long, creative career? There's no other designer that I can think of that sums that up better than Bryan James, an award-winning, prolific freelance designer, and he's mastered the art of evolution while staying true to his unique style and vision. So what's his secret? Infusing every project with cute and quirky, yet sometimes understated, powerful ideas that carry his unmistakable signature. We explore the importance of cultivating personal taste, how we can trust our ideas, and how we can effectively navigate imposter syndrome so we can stay true to who we are in our signature style. From print design to Rive to Japanese wrestling, prepare for a fun and far-ranging practical masterclass on design with Bryan James. Let's dive into it. Bryan James, it's so nice to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's deeply an honor. Can't believe that you asked me on this, to be honest.
Well, it kind of blows my mind that people listen to this anyways. I think it just comes into like that imposter syndrome kind of thing where I imagine that no one would want to listen to me, which is why I made a podcast talking to guests so that they could talk more than I have to talk to try and sound smart.
To be honest, I think often that these kind of imposter syndrome elements, not just with design work, but with something like this, I think these sometimes are the things that drive you to make something quite good. I've found that to be the case anyway. And also, I've thought for quite a long time that specifically what we do in interactive is kind of like missing something like this. So it doesn't surprise me one bit that that the podcast is doing as it's doing.
Good to have you because you've actually been requested multiple times by people. Sometimes they'll just if people DM me, I'll say like, hey, who do you want to hear from? Because I don't have enough time in my day to kind of search out people, especially as I'm actively kind of avoiding social media more and more these days due to just, I guess, the political spectrum, but also just technology gets, I don't know, the technology seems to have a way of making itself more and more irrelevant over time. And I guess it seems less impactful to me, even though it's a good business tool to be on social media.
Yeah, I find it's a little bit dizzying as well. Obviously, there's the current stuff going down with X and a large boycott of that, I would say. But generally, it's something I've felt has changed in the last 10 years, actually. I feel like people are far less willing to share others' work, in our space at least. It's much less about that. And I feel like that's changed the atmosphere a little bit. It's not as pure as it once was, and I think that probably goes through to all of them, really. But yeah, it's good not to be so fixated on social media, especially in what we do. When you release a project and you see how many likes did it get, and sometimes it's easy to fixate on this and then judge that a project that didn't didn't get as many likes isn't as good as ones which have. And yeah, you can't think this way. I don't think so. Yeah, it's positive to take a step away, I think.
Oh, it's probably like a point in maybe everyone's kind of career journey. Maybe some people don't get over it, but having the analytics and the results of a project dictate their happiness, opposed to allowing the process and creating the work to be the primary driver and the source of joy from just making the work in general. I compare it to almost like sports or music where like you want to just be in the game as long as possible. It's not about the wins. It's really about the act of doing. So I think that is something that I have been more happy to think about as I continue down this career path. But also, the platforms that we use have changed dramatically from what their original inception. And now it's like you don't even reach your whole 100% audience unless you're in like a paid tier of the platform. So it's like the likes and the seeing it and the shares like is almost irrelevant because the data is skewed by the algorithm in general.
On that note of the it being more about the process rather than the results that it'll get in terms of this, social media traction, I do also think that has quite a large impact on the soul of the project. Sometimes you can see something that's quite nice, but it lacks a soul, and I think that a big part of that is that it's been created with this result in mind. It can also be in something that, I mean, being completely honest, uh, winning something like a site of the day is quite often a primary target. But having that kind of thing there from the outset, like, yeah, it changes the soul of a project. And I think that's the essence that can sometimes really connect with people, having this soul.
It seems like there almost just needs to be like a slight switch in like the orientation of like the goal should be I would like to create work that is so good that it resonates out in the world, but that drive needs to come from like a passion and a love of doing the work in general, and being so proud of it that you want to submit it to an award site. And I guess from that point on, you have no control. You submitted it. If it wins, if it doesn't win, is completely out of your hands because you've already done the work. You put in the love, you put in the time, you put in the care and the detail. I'm assuming, hopefully, and you're just so excited to share it that you submit it. And if there's some byproduct of that, whether it's winning that award or helping you to get work in the future, like that's all of an outcome of producing something that's excellent or quality that you're proud of.
I think this is all very connected to something that I think about quite a lot, and it's the relevance of taste and maintaining your taste. And I think about this quite a lot, and have tried in some moments to make sure I'm steering that to an extent. So when you see work, and I'm really not targeting, I'm not trying to at all target like award sites. I think they do a fucking amazing job for what we do, honestly. And they're just one element of this. But it could be, the bigger awards where there's a fancy show, etc. Right? Also, just features online where you see certain kinds of projects doing well, and that can also be that then businesses think, that's good. Like that's perceived as good, so I think that's good. And then it's very easy to get into the trap of seeing that that's good and then twisting what you're doing to be like that because you've seen that being successful. But I really think it's extremely important to maintain a taste. And if you maintain your taste and that's what steers the project, then in a way, I feel like when you bring yourself into the project, I know obviously you have to do what's best for the client, create the project that's going to do well for them. But I still think, and this could be controversial to some people, that I like to try to bring myself into the project somewhat. That's the way I feel like is the key to trying to make something quite unique, but also that has the consequence of, I would say, possibly less chance of being featured on these websites because your taste is specific. Your taste shouldn't be based on what you see around and is doing extremely well.
I would agree with that. And it's something that I think about a lot as well. And the pieces, the aspects of it that I tend to focus on is the fact that a company is hiring, let's say an agency or an individual, a freelancer, whatever kind of person that they're hiring them because they have a perspective and they do have a level of taste. And yes, that taste can, let's say, flux for what is best for the particular project, but your individual taste shouldn't be influenced or prioritized by, let's say, a trendy pocket of culture or subculture. It should be in the service of either the client or because it's a perspective they're hiring you to have. So a very specific opinion or a way of seeing or being. I mean, I think about other examples like you go to a specific restaurant, let's say maybe a Michelin star restaurant, because you're really excited about that chef and what they're going to cook you, or you're really excited about a musician because you resonate with their work and they have a particular vision of what they want to say and the music that they produce. And sometimes that shifts and change as they grow as a person. And I think that's where like taste and style can elevate, evolve, and shift over the course of time. And but the thing is, it's like your specific lens, it has like an opinion behind it, and you're making decisions because it connects to you, but there may also be strategy involved.
Just on the last point you made there, I think that being driven by taste also makes those decisions quite easy. You don't second guess things as much if you're basing everything on instincts. By the way, I just want to mention one thing. When I say taste, just for anybody thinking like, oh, he's saying he has good taste or something, I mean a taste. A taste can be terrible, but it's a taste. It's because it's someone's opinion whether that's terrible or not, or good or not. Like a taste can be so fucking whack, but that is incredibly unique. And yeah, I mean, in the example you mentioned with the musicians, quite often the bands who everyone remembers are like, oh yeah, it's their sound, and then they influence loads of people or loads of bands. And then if there's a band where you can see, oh yeah, you can map out their influences quite easily, they haven't got this like rich uniqueness somehow.
It's interesting because there's like collective taste, and that's where we kind of get pockets of music.
Bang on, yeah.
Yeah. So like 80s had a particular sound. So there's pockets of taste, but then there's a loads of different bands that are doing different things. I think we had even talked offline one time about like David Bowie and his influence and his personal taste and how it shifted and changed.
That was an amazing example because yeah, he basically had different stages, completely evolved, and yeah, evolving the taste. Um, but yeah, this like the community taste, it's so easy to get wrapped up into that. And that's the thing. I think to an extent you do have to. Obviously, you have to keep up with like modern visual appeal. Um, if you were designing something with the same visual taste that you had in the 90s, I didn't have any visual taste in the 90s, by the way. I was up to 14 years old, but I just mean as an example. Then it wouldn't work. A website 800 pixels wide, or maybe even 600 pixels wide, or something. So yeah, it does have to evolve, but like, yeah, but still have this kind of key thread through it. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing to think about, actually. The how you have to evolve your taste, and I think it's something that you kind of have to have an eye on. You know, most of the time in the work we create, you feel the evolution of what you're doing visually, or not just visually, but like maybe the technical adventurousness of the work that you're doing, or just evolving some parts. But I think that the taste part's kind of like in the background. It's not as visible, and for that reason, I think it needs quite a bit of concentration, or you need to keep an eye on it.
So if I were to be so bold as to try to get to the root of what the bri taste is, and like what is kind of
I was about to ask the same thing there.
no way. Okay, then we can go tit for tat back and forth. But I would say that your kind of taste involves a boldness of bright colors, a love of the animated and the micro interactions. I think that your work has a playfulness to it and almost like an optimistic point of view shown through design. And I think that that's a very clear, I guess, like through line of a lot of your work. Even the sites that you have that are kind of like maybe let's say like darker in terms of like the primary color is black. Or I think back to like the Train Robber VR, like they all have like this interesting dynamic element that it has like a uniqueness to it. There's the animations that kind of play into the general dynamic of the website and it being like playful and fun and just like a joy to use. So am I hitting the nail on the head of like what kind of makes like a Bryan project?
Yeah, it's funny that you pick this element up because, firstly, I don't know why, but like the fun, bold, bright colors is just something that's there. It's always been there from the beginning when I was at university. That's what appeals to me. Um, and also, I think that design and creativity is an extremely positive thing. Like, I think it brings something quite bright into the world. And I think that even when you have a project which needs like a more sinister or darker tone, I think you can only apply that by having bright moments or like a positive part to balance it out. If you, and this is like a marketing thing for many years, I would say, like the companies like, you know, WWFs of this world, not the wrestling company, of course, um, they need to, when they market something and they're trying to hit somebody's heart regarding a very important issue with animal conservation, etc. You can't just go all in with something very depressing. You need something positive to balance it out. Otherwise, nobody listens because, I mean, why would you? I don't want to just feel depressed at this thing that you're throwing at me right now, which is all advertising. So I think that that's the first element that I think that you always need to have a positive, also just a positive outlook generally. I think that in what we do, we get to bring something into the world. It's exciting. It's amazing to be able to do that. And why would you not feel positive about it? And when you create something that you like, whether it be a visual thing or something animated, the feeling is great. The feeling's amazing. So I feel like maybe that's a part of where that comes from. That I feel positive about creating. And I think that I do not in any way want to talk like in any way negative about some projects out there because there's all sorts of different styles that you like. But I myself, in my own work, anytime there's been a project where it's rather like needs to be dark, I kind of like feels like brushing again, going against things. Um, and I would say it's interesting that you picked that out because I would say an interesting thing about your work is that you have that element, but quite often you will have like a dark background palette, but it's very bright. And I think that's actually more difficult to achieve, to be honest. You know that it feels bright and positive, even though sometimes you'll have like black background color palette. Everything pops. Does that make sense? Oh, my wayward there. Because I was going to ask you the same.
I think I like in design like really really high contrast, and I think that's like the benefit of like a darker background enabling the foreground to really like shine. So sometimes I think about it in like almost like a theatrical sense where like if you're in a theater it's completely dark whether you're at the cinema or like a live performance, but then the foreground is illuminated and that's what you're seeing. It's funny looking at your work, I'm like I love the bold colors, and then when I try it myself like it sometimes it feels like perfectly right if we're doing a project, and then sometimes I'm like I think we should make everything black.
Yeah, nice. I was going to ask, do you feel that that bleeds into, not so take it away from anything design related, but we're visual people, so you look at other kinds of artistic work, could be art itself, but all sorts of things. You mentioned theatre there. Do you think that bleeds into your taste of other things? This like this visual contrast desire.
I think so. I think it resonates in maybe just like a mentality in me in general where I like those types of ideas or visuals or music that is kind of like brushing up against or has like that high contrast. So like I think that's like the cool thing about like jazz in a lot of ways or like hip hop in a lot of ways. It kind of like can play in like this very like contrasting world. So in jazz you have like the tension of like the notes that sound like quote unquote wrong, but it's like the dissonance to make the other notes sound right. So you may get a sound that feels alarming or jarring, but then it resolves nicely. And I think like that is like a beautiful concept in design or art. I think that hip hop another example where you can fuse whatever genres you want together. So taking samples, taking pieces of other music and culture and fusing it together to create a new sound, like the Beastie Boys introducing like punk into hip hop, produced by three Jewish boys in New York, is a very different sound than like the sounds of the Bronx or Harlem. Using disco tracks and then slicing up the drum beats. So I think like from that, a lot of my references are based on music, just because that was like a huge part of my life, still is. And I think that it does a good job of communicating things that I can't like explain visually. I can explain through genre references.
I feel like it's a really interesting thing to link something you like in other other art forms completely away from design and bring them in somehow, like you mentioned there. Because I think that if you do something like that, I feel like it can have an impact on your self confidence as a designer. Because I think the unfortunate thing about what we do is the skills tend to be a little bit soft because everything changes so fast. Like you can learn a piece of software, or you can learn how to do this kind of design or this kind of design. That kind of design or that tool will then die. Like it fades away. Um, it fades away. And then you need to learn. And I think that can have quite an impact on making you feel like all the things you know are kind of like this fluffy, movable thing that can mean nothing. And do I know anything? But then if you take something from like elsewhere like that and apply it into what you're doing, that's not expirable. Like that doesn't expire. That also has an impact in the taste side, by the way, because you're automatically making something more unique because the influences are coming from far elsewhere rather than directly in the region of work you're doing yourself. My entire point there is I think that like self confidence for us as designers is quite important and it's very vulnerable. I think many people in what we do would agree with that. That we're quite susceptible to imposter syndrome. But if you have some anchors like this, oh yeah, this is how I do this, rather than okay, I know this style and I can do that, and then I'm not going to do that anymore for the rest of my life. If you got this like yeah, you've got this anchored thing. I think that can make you feel a bit more comfortable that you do know quite a lot and that you do have skills that are valuable and won't necessarily expire to things like AI, you know, which is especially relevant now, I would say.
One thing that I take a little bit of confidence in, and it's usually I have to remind myself of this when I hit like some sort of roadblock, is acknowledging the fact that creativity is a ever renewable resource. Like if you think about creative people, artists, musicians, even like business people over the course of like their very long career, like say they're still working at 70 or 80, they're still making great things, but it just may be different than when they were 22. Maybe that was like the height of their artistic career, but they're still doing what they love and making things. So I think like it's a nice feeling knowing that it's always renewable. You can always be creative again. So hitting a roadblock is just like taking the time to accept that, okay, I'm struggling at this moment, but I know that I will get through this one way or another. Maybe I have to work a little harder. Maybe I have to relax a little bit more and allow more fun into my life to break through this creative block at this given time and push through. So, this is all hopefully tying back to, I think, the fact that AI does change things, but the human element is so incredibly valuable. And tying back to taste, which I think is an essential part of our conversation, we should do more in being humans and being ourselves and analyzing what we believe and what we think is cool versus kind of like baseline or standard, or what is relevant now versus what is always evergreen, so that we have that continued building of taste so that we can translate it to tools as they continue to change.
And just to touch on your point there, when you mentioned about hitting a roadblock um, and creativity, I've never thought about that before. It's a special thought that creativity is kind of renewable, because it kind of crystallizes something that happened to me a few years ago. I really went through about a few years, like a number of years ago, where everything collapsed completely in my head creatively. And it was like the creative side, especially, was like burnt somehow. I don't like to use words like burnout or something without knowing it, and I'm not sure it was, to be honest. But it was it was there for sure, where I lost that spark, like that desire somehow. And I really, really worried. And I'm saying this in case if anybody is maybe going through a similar kind of thing, you really think like, fuck, what am I going to do? Because right now, I was lucky enough, I'd had a few years experience. So you're kind of like getting by on fumes or like of experience. Some things pull you through in terms of like delivering something, but you know that what you're making is not it's not as adventurous as it once was. You mentioned the when you're younger or something, the highlight years, and I was like, I know this can't go on like for a long time. Shit, like because I genuinely thought it's gone or it's like dive bombing, and then it just came back like maybe about 3 years ago or something like this. And yeah, that thought that it's renewable is really positive way of thinking about things. Like it's an enriching thought, and it's to be cherished. Actually,
That's why maybe some of my comment was about like that humanity element of like, do I need to, am I just being lazy, quote unquote? Do I need to push a little bit harder, or do I need to listen to, like, let's say my heart or my head? Do I need to pull off the gas and just like chill, or do something else? Do I need to find a new hobby, or what is the thing that will influence the work even if I don't realize it? And obviously, like, you don't have the answers like when you're going through it. You can only connect the dots looking back, but it could be that you just need to do more in your life or change something in your life, and it'll flip that switch to unlock that creativity again. So it's just like, it's very challenging when you're in it, because you're like, this is completely gone. And I've had moments in my life where I'm like, I'll never be creative again. I'll never get another project again. I'll, have to take an agency job and, work my 9 to 5. And
sorry, anybody who works an agency job. No, go on.
it's all personal preference, but like for me, that wasn't what I needed in my particular life. And so like that made me scared, and just kind of like a clam, made me close up, opposed to, trying new things, experimenting. And I think that is just a part of, well, maybe the creative process, but just understanding the kind of roots of creativity and how it's connected to all of us as a human, which is why I've made the point to focus on yourself, your taste, do more for you, so that you're being a good human, and that'll influence your creative work. Just seeing things out in the world and experiencing things ultimately impacts the work that you do in profound ways that you don't know yet. And then you can analyze looking back.
Yeah, I think firstly, 100% agree regarding taking like looking at other things in your life that can unlock things. I was thinking there, a simple microcosm of that is that you'll be sketching or trying to make a mock-up, and you'll be hacking away, and sometimes it works and sometimes it just fucking doesn't work. It just doesn't matter what you do, it just nothing is going right. And then you'll go to the shower and you'll instantly have the idea. This is like a small day microcosm of that. It's like you go to the shower and somehow and a friend once told me about the intense science behind this, but yeah, the walls get opened up, and you allow it back in, you allow in what's meant to be there, and you have the answer. So when you take in things elsewhere, yeah, like you said, maybe a new hobby, etc. I think the issue with that when you're going through that is if you take the time properly and you're not working. When I say not working, it can be that you're still like doing enough to like make some kind of an income or whatever, but that you're not. Yeah, you're not like going hard at it as we've been taught to do all of our lives to be 9 to 6. um, I think in some cases you can start to feel like you're this like nothing, like because I think that for a lot of us, with it's linked to the imposter syndrome side of things. When you're doing good work or you're just doing work generally, I think it can form quite an important part of your self confidence, that layer, um, and and when that's gone, it's like you can even dive further into thinking, well, I'm just. But I think it's like what you said there is so bang on, and it relates very well to what we've been talking about, that like it can be that even then you are evolving what you're doing just because you're not working actively on a project. You mentioned there about like taking taste in, and taste is this fluffy thing. You can take it from so many things. That's evolving, and actually probably you're taking more in than you could have done when you are working, because when you're working you're kind of there a little bit sometimes in your work, even when you're doing something socially or with your family. It's a bit of a shame, but you know, I think if you get away from that, you can even take other things in even more so, and that can have a really positive impact in um, in your taste, which will affect the work. And yeah, I think it's really like weird to say, hopefully not, that it's reassuring to hear you say that, Britton, that you kind of went through similar things, because these are the kind of things that we don't really talk about. Nobody's posting on Twitter, by the way, I haven't made any good work in 2 years. Do you want to see all the shit I've made in the last 2 years? I'm not proud of any of it.
That's where like social media comes in as like the highlight reel. So it's like you may think that, you know, person X or company X is like unstoppable, but I wonder how much work they're doing that they're not sharing because they don't want that to be the next project that they get. So curating it so that it looks a certain way, feels a certain way, because ultimately business, a lot of our business is kind of predicated on what we release, and that influences the next type of project that we get. So that's where like passion projects can come into play, where we're releasing work that maybe is self-initiated and can help get the projects that we want in the future. So like it could be real work, it could be fake work, that doesn't matter, but we're showing that highlight reel so that we are appealing to the maybe that big fish, that client, that brand that we want to work with on the other end, and kind of putting the best foot forward. Again, that's important. Um, the the fact that we don't talk about like the hard part is, I think, because maybe a little bit of fear around that, trying not to look or feel perfect to the world. But ultimately, I think we resonate with the people that show authentically like every part of them.
Weakness. Mm, absolutely. I think it's so interesting that you mentioned there about the work that maybe you don't see, because people are curating their what do I want my collection of work to look like, so that I get in what I want to get in. Because I think that's something that um, in the past I've struggled with that question quite a lot. You mentioned earlier like this kind of poppy, bright stuff, and then also like, yeah, for me it's a very important thing has always been like the concept side, like bringing some kind of concept in. So those kind of things are like what makes me warm inside. um, but you know, that it doesn't bring it, like you know that there's fucking loads of work out there for work that's more commercial, that's very different. And that's something that, especially a few years ago, like I was thinking, right, I need to make things a bit more yeah, commercial is the wrong word. Normal is one. A bit more like you could look at it and think, and as a business owner, you could think that person can make me a nice website, not oh fucking hell. It's a bit of a struggle, and I think it's quite important to like put those thoughts away and just show what you want to get in, not what you. Yeah, I mean, obviously that's difficult in terms of everybody needs to eat, you know. But I think that the moment you start trying to change the kind of work that you're showing, sometimes you have to have that kind of work, of course, but that's not necessarily your exact cup of tea. But the moment you start, and I'm going to say something here that many people would probably disagree with. The moment you start doing that, you've stopped being any iota of an artist. And this is something I think I've had very interesting conversations with Bryan Powell about this before. I do consider what we do to be like art. And I think to me, it's an interesting thing to, when you have your portfolio website or however you're showing yourself, to treat it like you're an artist, as though you were a music artist. And I think that as soon as you start like uh, showcasing work that you know is like for this quadrant of people over here, they're going to like that and it might get me more business. Well, I'm not an artist anymore. And then that can change you. Like, I think that, and that can have a huge bearing on how you feel the rest in the other areas of your life. And yeah, it's all just so connected.
I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit because I do think that like there's the connection to being an artist, but it is you having your perspective and doing the types of things that you want to do is like a fundamental business strategy in itself. And we may not put the words to it in that way, but like by not presenting the work that you don't want to do, that's saying I don't do that type of work. You shouldn't hire me for that type of work because we're not going to be a good fit. So by filtering, you're showing the work that you want to get, and that's influencing the type of people that'll reach out and want to hire you anyways. So, you don't go to like I'm not that this is how that works, but you don't go to Led Zeppelin to make not a Led Zeppelin song. Why would you go to
Yeah.
Bry if you don't want like a Brian James aesthetic website? That's where like I think it connects back to taste, and taste is a fundamental part of business in general.
I absolutely adore the thought. I think that that's like really backed up something that I've feared might be wrong for a long time. You know, this thing of like, right, concentrate on what I like. What do I like? As in, like when you're creating something, what do I like? Rather than necessarily thinking for what would be best for the client, which is what you're told to do. I think about that a lot, but when you say that, it's like a conscious business decision. And that's why they come to you to have that decision making process. For me, that's like as a freelancer, and I'm very curious, how is it comfortable for you, like because you're a business, have you always felt comfortable deploying that way of doing things? Because looking at your work, I'm 100% sure that you're in exactly the same kind of mentality with the not necessarily doing stuff that you don't feel is right for your taste.
My number one goal or job is to, I guess, present ideas that I think are best for the client based on their strategy and their goals. Will always produce work that we feel is done through a level of taste and a level of sophistication and quality that we would be happy to put our name behind. I think that there's what is right for the client, and then there's like what is right for you, and they most of the time go together. So
Mm.
I would say that we make work through the lens of creating for the love of creating and fun. So we're going to always shoot for like the stars. We're going to always try to come up with like the weirdest, funnest, like beautiful, crafted idea. I almost have like a tyrannical nature where I'm always pushing for quality. But here's the caveat is that you have to do that, but then you have to add in the constraints of the project. So it's like how does this apply to this industry? What are their targeted goals? How do we like learn from their competition and maybe pivot, maybe embrace where we can? And those, you're just adding back in the constraints. So if we're like over here with shooting for the stars, generally we're pushing right here to find the perfect solution for them, opposed to, just like doing everything that you want, because it ultimately it's a collaborative nature. There's other people, there's stakeholders, there's opinions of your team as well as the opinions of the client, but you're co-creating it together. So you're going to get to that perfect solution, and you just have to be comfortable signing off on that and knowing that it's not going to be over here, it's going to be right here by the end of it, but that's going to be the right thing. So I think that's how I think about it, because ultimately I'm not just producing for myself. Even though that's how I feel about the work, I am making it for someone else. So I want to make sure that I'm cognitive and respectful to their vision, their values, their mission. And then I think that's where you just end up co-creating something beautiful together.
I think you're right there in terms of like the when you need to be empathetic towards their perspective, because obviously they will know a lot of things, like an insane amount of things that you don't know in the area that they're working in. So yeah, it's important not to kind of disregard those. And I also think it's where you can maybe even come up with with some even more unique projects, to be honest. I think that when that's not every situation you're speaking of there, but when a client is maybe perhaps a bit more conservative in their way of doing something, if you find a middle ground, it can be the case that, okay, it wasn't to this thing over here that you had in your mind, but comparative to what they're doing, the business they're doing, it's still really, really special. I actually think it's like sometimes quite a bit more interesting to work on projects where the client isn't as sexy as maybe some others would be. And I think it's a more interesting area to create interesting work in. Let's take your Nike, Adidas, like Apple kind of thing. If you make something extraordinary in that area, it's kind of expected.
So, Bry, can you explain to me how Japanese pro wrestling changed and impacted your life and influenced your future?
Oh gosh, yeah, you've been doing your research. Japanese pro wrestling. Well, yeah. So the weird thing is, it's got quite an impact on why I'm a designer. I discovered Japanese wrestling when I was let's see now, bloody hell, I think 17. No, earlier than that, 15, 16. From that, specifically Japanese wrestling, they kind of bounce each other on the heads, as in like they do moves where they land on the heads, and this fascinated me as a kid. And like the design thing, I did art in school and I liked that, right? But like that was just the general thing. And then me and my friends started pro wrestling, pro being variable term there, but we would record it in my grandmother's house while she wasn't there, with a mattress, and we'd create these shows. And I created the like presentation beforehand. In the Japanese wrestling, they had these kind of very specific looking video packages where the typography was this very, very 90s, specifically 90s Japanese, like beveled gradients style, but thick and chunky. And I really loved those. So I started making the intro where you say like Mr. Dangerous versus the Colossal and stuff like this. And those presentations were the first time I ever touched like actually making something visually. And then you'd kind of like do them for the next show and the next show. That's the impact it had, and like why? Because I think without that there, I'm not actually sure. Maybe it's one of those things where it would have come from somewhere, but it felt very natural to me to start making those like packages. And also quite an important thing, because we were making the shows, you'd put like sound you'd put like sound on them and stuff. And to do sounds on a videotape back then, it was like these small 8mm things. You had to like record the sound playing on something live, being fed in. So there was a lot of like kind of very amateur production work, but it was my first taste of it, and it was exciting. And you're making something for nobody ever to watch. By the way, it's like we'd be on the commentary, and here we are in front of 20,000 fans. It's like, no, literally nobody's watching this. Nobody's watching it but us. But yeah, so that's how it impacted basically. And then I became like very obsessed with Japan from that. And I think that Japan had a huge impact on me generally in becoming a designer, because their whole culture is just unbelievably visual.
When we say Japanese wrestling, are we talking like judo? Are we talking like sumo wrestling? Or is it more like WWE, like American wrestling, where it's just like a produced show?
Well, it's unfortunately not sumo, although I very much like sumo. It is the third option there. However, what fascinated me, because I used to be like, when I was a kid, like a big fan of the American WWE, but it's a show. But specifically, the stuff that I got into, it was in the 90s, and I was watching it around 2000. They are extremely physical, and it's all about what's going on in the ring. So at that point, by then, even for probably 10 years, the the WWE was more about their microphone and shouting, shit talking. I'm not sure. Sorry, just one question. Do you know anything about WWE in general? Like,
Not
how
really.
far can I go with the references here?
As far as you
Tombstone
want.
Piles
As
Run.
far as you want, Bryan.
Thank you. I'll be here for a while. I'm sorry to say, but yeah, they really kill each other. They really kill each other, and at that age, for some reason, that really like it was like wow.
You want, Bryan.
But to bring it back to some kind of relatable point, it's like this special thing, because so you said that, what is it out of the three? Is it the show? I think that was my first taste of. So take away the designing of the slideshow part, you're crafting this show. You're like making a story, making a show. You are creating something, and I think that there's an excitement around that. And we were like copying the Japanese wrestlers. We were landing each other on our heads. We almost died. I mean, it really could have ended very badly. We were bleeding sometimes. We smashed a lampshade that my mother nearly killed me.
Do you think that mentality of like production and thinking about your early experience of crafting these shows, do you think that translates into your work now? Kind of the production of a website, everything from design to development? Because you've had a very prolific career and you've shifted a lot, where you went from being a traditional graphic designer to being a web designer to dabbling in development for a long period of time to freelancing, jumping into Rive and being kind of known as, I'm going to give you the title of like the Rive expert. But has that translated, that idea of like this production quality, has that translated into your work and how you've been able to stay like relevant and crafting exceptional work over an exceptionally long period, a decade at this point?
I think for me, one of my biggest fears of anything is to not evolve and to stay kind of like stagnant, and it's something I worry about that I'm doing all the time. So for you to say that, it's like, oh, that's actually super incredible to hear. Yeah, yeah, you're right. It's like the production of like the total package kind of thing. Like, what's the whole experience? I think that even when I was at university doing my first bits of like little toying about with Flash, sound was in there already, and that's to this day a thing. And I think that it's still, and that's what makes it surprising. It's good. Not every website needs sound, but I love it. I love that. I love to do something like that. And the one thing area where I would say it's like interesting, where it's lacking, I think it's really important sometimes to know where you lack key core skills, is like, for example, video production and 3D. So video production and 3D are like two areas that just do not interest me. When I say that, I don't mean interactive 3D. I mean like modeling a scene, like um, like when I say don't interest me, I can look at them and think they're super nice, but there's nothing inside me that makes me burn to make it. So on that, in that regard, it's like maybe not so much. I'm not sure. um, no, because like yeah, to just want to create all the different kinds of things, I think that's really like yeah, that's I mean that's the master plan. How about you? Because like I recently, sorry if I have this wrong, but the recent sorry, you said the name before. It was the really interactive
The
project.
A Light in the Woods, that one.
Yes, yeah, yeah. That also had sound, didn't it?
Yes, that one had sound. I think tying it back, and it's funny because like I have never really made these connections either, but I really like very cinematographic type of work, and it's a pleasure and a joy to get to do that. So with that website, there was sound introduced because it felt applicable. Not all the time it does, like you had said, but like it does add a lot of personality just by the way that things sound. I mean, you get an emotional reaction when you hear like the lightsaber sound, or like the beaming up of like Star Trek, like that little phaser. So I mean, like these things like do kind of produce emotion, and I think they just like when you have the visual, when you have the sound, when you have the music, when you have all of these things layered, it's just layers of emotion kind of compounding on each other.
Yeah, I mean, full immersion is, I think, really only possible if you have like all those different parts at the same time singing in harmony. Nothing at all against print design, but what you said there is completely correct. You're missing these elements that can really like fully make you immersed. It's also what makes me slightly frustrated. There are many, as I'm sure you've seen, like many parts of the online digital design world where they full on only think, and if you disagree with it, you're wrong, that these websites where you're trying to immerse somebody are incorrect, that they shouldn't exist, and that they're yeah, they don't convert, or why would you do that, etc. I find it such a crazy way of thinking, because yeah, it's you can immerse somebody in something, you can make them feel, and then oh, that's wrong because you do not see it as art. You don't see it as this thing that can be enjoyed. You don't see it as this thing that actually, as just as a thing, can be enjoyed, rather than okay, I come every single thing I do on my phone or my laptop is just purely about completing a task or earning myself some money. You know, okay, of course, the television is a bit bigger, and you got a slightly bigger speaker, but it's just a large version. You can still immerse somebody. You'd easily say that someone can be immersed in a movie. Anyway, back to the point. Sound is a very interesting area where, no disrespect, I assume it's probably also the case that you didn't study sound design as I didn't. Right, so it's like quite often we come to these projects and we want to place sound in there, and you know you're trained in design, and so sound, you want to do it, and it's like it's always like sound is so easy to get wrong. It's why I think like it has to be like it has to be that the thing you're doing it for already has its own very specific tone, because otherwise a tone that's so clear of what it's trying to be that the sound can't derail that, and the sound is also completely in line with that, because I think like sound somehow is a bit more I think you like react a bit more viscerally to it. So if you have something that's like a very sad visual, like a very very dark blue Picasso blue phase visuals or something, and then you have like plinky plonky music on the top. Your reaction to that is like, well, firstly confusing, but like you react to the plinky plonky. The same goes the other way around. But that's also why it's like I think really it's like extremely satisfying when you manage to what you think you manage to like hit it on the head. Like I'm not sure how you find your sounds generally, but generally I like just sift through literally fucking hundreds of sound effects and different tracks and stuff, and they're all wrong. And then you hit something, and it's like, oh, fuck yes, that's it. This just changed the project because as well, that the sound isn't what makes that emotional moment, right? It's the combination of all the things. But I really think it can allow what's previously like a really great moment to be like a magical moment when you add that layer.
You hit the nail on the head by saying it creates a magic moment. It doesn't need the sound, but when you get it together, it's unexpected, it's magical, it's fun, and it adds this level of beauty and complexity to the project that you just wouldn't normally have otherwise. So I guess what that really comes down to is that it's this attention to quality and craft, and also a love and a passion for it, because you're spending the hours of time digging through sound bites to find the right one, which can be absolutely nauseatingly boring until you find that one and it lights you up. Finding that perfect song, that perfect little sound effect, and then boom, it transforms the moment forever.
I also think, like, you said that there about, like, the feeling that that somebody's taken the time to do something can be like tripping through the sounds, or it can be multiple other things. I genuinely think that that's like a part of what I can enjoy about a piece of work. Like, to know that someone really spent the time, and this is like an instant moment. I'm not talking about like looking at the thing for an hour and thinking, oh yeah, this person did this, did this, did this. It's a fucking moment that you understand the clarity of how insane it is that they went to all this effort when they could have just gone, here's a nice thing, okay, it's done. That is involved in the enjoyment of something. I think you
Yeah.
can't just add any old music to something. It has to be so fucking right, to the point where maybe you just don't add it, if you don't find the right thing.
Creating effortless things takes a shit ton of effort, is the thing that we don't realize, to get to that perfectly executed state where it just feels like that was, you know, divinely destined to be that.
Did you ever like create some sounds, or like mess about with somehow, you can't find an asset for something, so you just make it? By the way, I haven't done that. I'm just curious, like, because I think your musical history, from what you said earlier, was like quite it was like a history lesson, so thanks for that, by the way.
For the A Light in the Woods project, for instance, the client was a musician. He had a friend that did audio. So he had his friend record like noises out in the world. And so we got some really cool stuff like cricket noises and stuff like that. And it was all made for the project, which was nice.
So how was the process? Did you like receive the sounds after the design work was done and such, or was it more like they went away and based things on what you did? Because I can imagine if you're doing those two things in isolation, it could be that they come together and they're like completely different. How is that?
So we had the website kind of done, and the client was doing all the artwork. So the artwork was there. So he could like pass off like a sort of like the vibe of what the sounds needed to be. But the guy doing like the audio engineering, he kind of went out into the world and like got like a bunch of stuff and then kind of gave it to us. So we curated the sounds to like what was necessary in the paintings at the time. So if there would be like cricket noises or wind, we'd have like wind moving as you go from page to page. So like that kind of was a transition. We kind of figured out where they would go based on what is the feeling that we want, what is like the emotional happenings here, and just kind of made it that way. So in some ways, we reverse engineered it. In some ways, it was very curated by the person creating the sounds or capturing them.
That's cool. It's physical though. You don't see that every day anymore, at least for websites anyway. It's amazing. Yeah, no, it's like that thing of I think what I mentioned before about where you're not like fundamentally trained in something. Excuse me. My fear getting involved in something like that, it can be sound, 3D, or whatever. It's like, okay, so again with the taste, you got your taste, but how finessed is this area? You know, sometimes I'll see an advert on the TV, and what I hear is fucking so obvious from a stock site, like the first thing that they'll find. This style. It sounds like a piece of stock music, and I'm thinking, how did they not hear that? And I'm always like fearful. Oh, what if that's the same in what I'm making? So when you get do something physically, it is what it is. It is it. there's no possibility of you not hearing the right quality because it is real. I think that's, yeah. It's really. I also think that can, doing things that way gives the project a real soul. And I mentioned before, it's like doing it in the real way, not cutting any corners.
I do think that we have to kind of make work the real way and not cut corners. And maybe that's like the hard way and it takes a lot more effort, but it's like, does the amount of effort matter if it gets us to the best result and destination? Maybe sometimes, yes, if it's a timeline based thing or a budget based thing. But I would say that taking that extra effort, going through that hard slog, produces the better results. And then there's a flip side where like sometimes you're just so joyful and excited and it's not hard at all. It feels effortless and you get to the perfect destination. But I do think they're kind of like two different sides of the coin, but they're leading to the same result of making excellent work that you're passionate about, opposed to doing like the easy thing.
Yeah, no, that's right. When you really when you're really inside a project that you're very passionate about, normally that entails kind of quite a lot of different avenues, like different things to solve. Even if you pass the design phase, it can be like you've got all these pockets. Maybe there's a like tick box, or probably using different apps than tick boxes on Notes app these days, most people. But you've got these different things to solve, and some of them you think to yourself, why have I, why have I done that? Why have I ended up halfway through that? I like made so many problems for yourself, but that normally is an indication that it's probably quite special, or it's more special than it could have been. The reason why it's so tough is, who the fuck would think to do that? Why would you do that? That's what makes something unique. Or is part of what can make something unique. Yeah, going trudging through the sand.
And getting to the soul of it. I'm going to quickly jump back to what we had talked about a little bit earlier, was like there is a pocket of the design community that does hate this emotionally charged driven work and doesn't feel like that there's conversions, and that believes that why wouldn't you just go with the simplest solution? To that, I would respond that we live in a world where almost everything is known at the touch of our fingertips. Like we have access to like Google or AI prompts giving us the right solution, giving us the bootstrap grid, or like the way to break through our constraints, like finding like the perfect UI kit, using material design, making things look like an app interface. Like those things are pretty standard and pretty easy to understand what the best solution is. In a lot of ways, like user experience is a lot of common sense. Common sense may not be common, so it may be an important job to kind of understand like the psychology of human behavior, to influence it through the UI. But to disregard the human and emotional experience that someone has, and to not acknowledge it as an essential business marketing tactic, it is absolute ridiculousness. Like, and that's just immature. The thing is, they're both valid.
Absolutely. I think as well, by the way, one thing is like what you mentioned there about like how these things are always all kind of like make everything quite expected. Also does make it easier to make a splash actually when everything's the same. But this is like not trying to do hot takes or something, but I thought for a long time it's like mass insecurity. If somebody's doing something in a very different way to what you're doing, and you've been taught this is correct. It can be the way you lead your life or anything. But this is what you've been taught is right. And then if these group over here are doing something completely different, and they appear to maybe there's some people who like that, it's kind of like, oh, it's a bit endangers me. I don't like that. So let's try and make sure nobody thinks that's correct. It's no, honestly, it makes me angry. That's the only reason why I'd say this, because I think that I don't know, probably not your viewers, but like some people would get quite like they wouldn't like what I'm saying. I think it's massive insecurity. It's like, because I would never turn around and see work that's like very, very usual, like you said there. It's like it's known, and say it's shit, it's boring, it's nobody should do that. I would never think of saying that ever. But they think it's all right to turn around at the more adventurous projects and say that's wrong. And yeah, you can think maybe they genuinely think that that's wrong for a client, but I personally think that it makes a lot of people feel like insecure about their own abilities, and that makes me sad because there's no reason to be at all. It's the only, because I don't understand how it can't be thought that like there are literally billions of websites. Don't quote me on that. Could be millions. I'm not sure. Like definitely millions. And of course it's possible that there's different kinds of websites that do have value. Of course it's the case that not every website is for the same purpose. It's like saying the only reason to paint something ever would be to sell it. No, you know what I mean. I mean, maybe it's drastic comparison, but of course you have paintings that aren't there purely to sell the painting. And yeah, I mean, I don't really like the comparison of like, okay, if someone doesn't sell a painting, it's like, oh yeah, so a client doesn't sell anything and then they go out of business. But yeah, it's yeah. Right.
It, that's the thing. It's like person who says like the type of work that we do is like valueless is disrespectful to the clients that are hiring us because clearly they derive value from it. And here's the thing, they're not going to get hired to do the work that we're doing because they don't know how. Maybe we don't know how to do the work that they're doing because we don't have that same mindset and perspective. Ultimately, it comes down to, I think, like one, taste again, and two, personal preference. Is like there's different goals, there's different strategies, there's different ways to financially, monetarily impact a business. And I'd say the strategy that a lot of us are using is differentiation, is this powerful impact of being fresh and original, which companies have implored since commerce. Like, so since the beginning of trading items or branding or like this idea, if there's two shops set up, one is a French bakery, one's an Italian bakery, like they're clearly fundamentally differentiated. They provide different things, and there's a reason for them all to exist. There's a reason for us all to do the work that we do and find a connection to the clients that are best suited for us. And that's like the beauty of it. So
Absolutely. I think it also takes away like the thought that that a piece of work can be like part of a company's journey, like the client's journey, because it can often be the case that, let's take an example, a marketing campaign, advertising campaign, microsite, the first website of a client, like their main.co or .com, like you said there, it's like at the beginning of a company, it's important to stand out. Sometimes you'll have a website that you designed like, I don't know, 4-5 years ago or something, and you'll go to check it once in a while, and one day it goes down or it's changed, and the feeling is like, oh, how dare you change the website that how dare you? No, obviously. And it's like, often I would say it's the case that, oh, they evolved. They outgrew that website, and but that website served its purpose. It's not that this current website is like better or would do the same. It's like it's part of that company's journey. And I think quite often the more like, yeah, let's say less scalable websites, just less boxes basically, is um it can be that you need a website that's going to be more adventurous or more visually stimulating or something before you then move on to something a bit more.
Why tear down when we can all support each other and there's room for so much different work in the world?
Weird thing for me is I think that there are absolutely areas where the two things match. One of my favorite pieces of digital design is Airbnb.com. I absolutely fucking love Airbnb.com. I think it's incredible. I think it's an incredible app, and that's obviously very very far away from big adventurous websites. I think you can see beauty in other kinds of design that are more money focused, that are more business focused.
I guess that's like you had said, Bry, where it's like focused on the soul of the work. And like, so that kind of ties to a bunch of different things. It's like, what does this brand need? Why does it need it? Is our goal to make like the most beautiful, usable, incredible thing with some magical moments, and it gets you to to Z like really quick, and it's like a pleasure to use and it doesn't break. Like that's a beautiful thing. I think of also like Cash App for instance, where their app is very like practical. It's a money app, and their brand is like wild and eccentric and amazing, and their experience around that is very different than the functionality of their app. It's like practicality meets brand meets eccentricity, and it works for them, where Airbnb is like family, community, beauty, elegant simplicity put together. It's like these things can work in the order that you arrange them, but the soul of the work comes out when it comes with intentionality.
It can be the case that how a company brands itself, whether that be through the different collateral that it has, branding, visual identity, etc. I think it also can be the case that the soul of what that is has an impact on how the company like behaves as people, right? So take away like who you're trying to market at. This may be bullshit, but it's something I've thought for a long time. It's that like if you brand yourself in a certain way, it can be that has like it alters how you behave inside. If you're a very very zany company but your match with is boring corporate identity, it seems a bit of a mismatch. If you brand yourself in a way, let's say you've operated in a normal way, but then you outwardly have this zany or quirky personality, I think it can be that then you have to be quirky and and have a personality in what you're doing. And then as customer service, the people working there, they're evoking that because it's all wrapped up in one bowl. And I think that that's the soul of a company, like it, the soul of the piece of work may not necessarily directly affect, okay, does it sell this amount of things? But it can affect the personality of the people working in the company, make them proud of something, actually, even. Okay, let's take a website is one thing, but if you have a whole rebrand, including a website, all these different things, and you've gone from this like kind of, yeah, normal thing to something quite amazing and people are talking about it and then you feel proud of that. I think that then can like kind of exude out of you, and you've got a company of people full of pride about this company, and then that's going to affect everything. That's one thing. I think that could be the case. I don't know. That's what I feel, but I think it's quite relevant.
I do think that is one of the pieces of like how branding can resonate outward. So if branding is kind of your mission, vision, values, aesthetic, kind of like made real, it kind of like translates through the tone, the way that people interact. That can be made by a person and then kind of taught. Maybe some of it is nature, some of it's nurture, but that's kind of carried through. Or it could be that, you know, you build that feeling and then people learn and they adopt it and it kind of expands out. So like the mission is made real versus, I guess, it being imposed. So it's like you're co-creating it together. So I think that that's a beautiful thing about companies and missions, and like how these things can feel tangible even though you don't really know where it's coming from, but like you get a sense of that feeling from a company.
As I've always thought your website it's got attitude. It's attitude is the word that always comes to mind for me, and yeah, that's yeah, no, that's it. It's like it fucking it makes a difference. It makes a difference, like on on how on how everybody interacts.
Attitude is essential for any project. I think like it's it's the way that you approach it, where it's something that I personally find is very, very valuable. Like what is the vibe, what is the attitude, what is the tone, what is the feeling. I'm more interested in, as a measure of success, how does the audience perceive this brand, this experience, this piece of design, way more than I focused on any other metric. Because if they perceive the thing in which we intend and design them to perceive it, ultimately it'll come back to whatever goals we're trying to hit. So if we're trying to convert people to buy something, if they love it, they trust it, they'll buy it if it's for them. You don't want the people that it's not for you. That's just a quick money grab scheme that'll only lead to negative reviews down the road, opposed to building an audience of people that really, really love this thing and want to be a part of it. So I think that attitude, that tone is fundamental in finding the right people. And I think that's just like sometimes a metric that you can record on paper or a spreadsheet. Sometimes it's purely felt and an emotional driver.
Absolutely, 100%.
I think that your work, Bry, does have a personality, an attitude, a tone, and it's usually expressed through the lens of this sort of colorful optimism. And we're coming up on this 10-year anniversary of your In Pieces project, which obviously has a soul, it has life, it has this beauty. And I think it's interesting. So, this is a passion project that you made. Can you walk us through the reasons of why you made it? How has it impacted your career? Did it influence your style? Is this tied to the attitude in the work that you want to be putting out into the world? So, a lot of questions there, but I'll let you kind of take it in the direction that you want.
It was a very specific moment in time in my trajectory where I had been looking increasingly more at development, doing the development of some parts of projects or some elements of a project. I was always talking to the developer very, very closely. We were like next to each other in our projects, okay, fine tuning this, and then gradually you get used to like CSS and such. So I was always kind of like diving into the CSS of projects that I was working on. And then at some point, I noticed that this it was. I mean, it's like probably 12 years old now. But I still see on Twitter, sorry X, every now and then there be something of like, cool use of clip path, and I'm thinking like it's been there literally 12 years, man. But that's cool that I use it. Clip path came out, and that's basically. I mean, at the time, you can do so much now in comparison, but it's like, yeah, you've got a div, and you can make a polygon with it, obviously triangles as well, and I saw that and I was excited by that because you've had a lifetime, well, a career time of working with boxes and circles. Oh my god, round a corner, shit, wow, we can do that, and they can do overflow hidden to mask it. Wow, in a circle or a box, So then when that came along, I was like, whoa, that has the potential to change so much. Because even hexagon before is like it's a static image, and from that, uh, I think I just experimented. If I move a triangle from here to here, I bet it won't. I guess it'll just go here or here on, or maybe not even work. And then lo and behold, with CSS transition, it went like, and I was like, what? Whoa! Oh my god, that's got something. And then polygon animals were not like it was a thing that has been done many times, probably for like 50 years or something, because there's so many examples of it. So somehow animals came to mind to try out, and then I was maybe like halfway through illustrating an animal where I thought like could do a set transitioning to each other. Rather, it was like originally okay, the polygons move around or something, and then like move between each other, and it all happened very quickly, like within the space of like 2 or 3 days, where I'm sketching like what I could do with the triangles, and I'd thought about endangered species as a topic, this huge horrible topic, of course, and then in pieces, it was like there, in pieces, and from that moment, it was like, got it, fuck, now I'm in shit, because in that moment, I've literally signed the next 5 months of my life away, you know. Because that's when you realize you've got something like that you feel very invested in instantly. It's like shit, because you need to create it. You must create it. There is no you are it's your you have to create it. You're forced to. I'm trying to think of a word of what it is. Responsibility, yeah. It's a responsibility to and I knew it was going to be like an intense amount of work. Anyway, so like the in pieces element changed everything. It's like, okay, this is not a graphic anymore. It's an idea.
What have been some of the positive impacts of releasing that project, a passion project that you kind of built almost by maybe like mysterious happenstance, kind of learning this new technology and seeing what it's capable of, and then building the idea and finding that idea? How has that impacted the way that you think about other projects, as well as how has it impacted your career as a freelancer?
My philosophy of like building things around a concept is kind of like it's always been the thing that I focus on, and I think that project gave me the confidence of my convictions. When that project was released and people appeared to like it, it gave me something that I carry with me to this day. Where when I have an idea that I think is what I think it's good, trust that, because I think before that you've always got that thing of like, do I really trust it? And I think that can really affect a project if you don't trust the idea. It's also given me confidence that we can have conversations like what we had just before regarding like whether someone can really be connected to a website or emotionally like reactive to a website. That gave me that. There's been other projects where maybe, but like it was like such a hard hit of it that it gave it. It's again linked to the confidence side of things. Gave me a lot of compassion as well, because the amount of people who were like involved in actual conservation efforts who got in touch regarding that. It's like, there's a infinite amount of people doing far more intensive jobs than I.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely came out of the project like loving the animals and like those species, and like,
Oh, of course.
like so like in terms of the like attachment to the animals, is like there's one in there called Vaquita. It's like the second one, and that species, since I think in the piece it says it's got like 30 left, it's now like less than 10, and it's like somehow it burns me a bit harder than it would if I read it on the news and I was interested in animals. It's like somehow I am like fucking joined with that species. And every time I read a story about it, like, oh yeah, now it's down to 10, now it'll be down to 7, it's like somehow it's like, oh god, my website didn't save the vaquita.
Oh no.
Yeah, anyway. But that's, I think, a really special thing about doing a personal project. Because in terms of like how it had an impact, and I really would relate this to anybody thinking to do personal projects. We spoke earlier on about like it can be many people in what we do. They've got a portfolio made up of projects based on where they've worked. Like that is literally what is the case most of the time, actually. And sometimes I feel extremely lucky that I worked at, like the first 2 or 3 jobs that I had, especially at a place called Epiphany Search in England. I must say is like our projects were just kind of like wacky. They were allowed to be wacky, and sometimes that's not the case. You are held. So sometimes you can have this portfolio where it's like, is it? It is just corporate projects. Is it actually linked to what I was feeling like I was doing at university? So I would say, like in terms of doing personal projects, that can be so insanely worth it because I think that project in Peace, I mean, it's 10 years old now, but still to this day, I don't mind putting it on all of my show reels because it's literally me. It's literally me. I still look at it and it's like, this sounds a bit pretentious, but it's like me looking back at myself. It's literally the manifestation of exactly what I like in a piece of work. Every single element of it, I haven't changed a little tiny bit, except for when Apple fucking turned around and made it so that you couldn't have sound automatically on websites, which is absolutely nonsense, of course. So you have to press the button now to make the sound happen. That's the one thing I changed. Anyway, so like, that, I think people can see that. So when you make a personal project, that's your opportunity to have you. Like, that you cannot have that in any project. In any project, like where there's a client and like nothing against the client involved, I'm literally saying it's impossible. It's impossible. When you make a personal project, you can make something that like you look back at it, and you're so proud of it, and because it's just you, and you can use it for, and if people see that it's genuine, it's completely you, and I think that can stand out a lot more than a lot of the client work. Obviously, you can't do every single project as a as a personal project because you won't won't be able to eat maybe beans on toast, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's
Yes.
given me, I don't know, it's given me something to be proud of, to be honest. Like it's still something I'm very proud of, and if when someone says that they remember that project, it almost makes me cry, honestly. It's like that, and I guess maybe that's part of it being a personal project. It's like that's what it gives you. Like, I just don't think you can feel that way about something that's not completely your own.
It doesn't look 10 years old to me at all. And I think
Thank
it's
you.
because like a really good idea is always timeless and the execution of it doesn't feel like a particular date, even though it was a particular date for you in kind of discovering the technology, learning from it, and then executing the idea. But I guess that's the power of good ideas in general.
Ideas, concepts, yeah. I mean, that is ultimately why, and again, like that's why I think it's even more relevant now with the advent of. I'm not going to say AI. I'm going to say tools which make things easier, right? Tools which make things that are expected easier, because that's not a new thing. If you've got an idea, yeah, it stands out. It's timeless. I think it's so relevant to just have like something in there.
And we've touched on it a little bit, Bry, but there's this kind of recurring theme of not being afraid to change, not staying static. And it seems like your career has been kind of defined and built in a way by that. So pivoting from graphic design to development, and now I guess the latest one of being kind of positioned well, I guess transitioning into Rive and in the powers of that animation and that tool. So how do you think about pivoting or changing? Is change something that you've always been comfortable with, adapting to it? And what is it that kind of keeps you, I guess, flexible and adaptable to changing with, let's say, new technologies, or the feeling inside of you like, oh, I need to change to shake things up?
Really interesting because it's made me kind of like think and maybe realize a big part of that. I've never consciously changed, like, and deliberately. I've maybe altered course at some points. I'll get into that, but like, I remember at university, I did a graphic design course, and this is just as relevant today as it was then. So we did a bit of Flash in our modules, and there's this program in the universities in England where you, as students, you can try to win a D&AD yellow pencil, design and art direction, and basically you can see the annuals from the years previous, or back then anyway. I don't know if they make them anymore, but and I was looking through the annual of the year previous, and I noticed very, very intensely that the interactive section wasn't very good. It was sorry, class of 2007. um, and I noticed that, and I remember thinking like, maybe I try that. Maybe I fixate on that because I feel like that's the area that looks like it's easiest to win. And I made this Flash project, and it fucking won. And that back then, I really don't need to bring it up or something, but that then was like an insane thing to happen. I'd not university was like, it was good, but that was quite a moment for me. I think that when you have a success, it builds confidence in a massive way, and it changes your trajectory from that point in a very positive way. And that was like the realization of okay, not consciously, but like I remember acknowledging that fixating on something where you see that the quality doesn't seem to be where it doesn't seem to be as advanced in that specific thing. I'm not saying the websites around then were terrible. I'm saying in this specific context, there was a hole there. I mean, it's a classic business thing. It's like, is there a hole in the market? Let's fixate on that. And basically, from that point, what I found going into my career is that you could take print design quality, put it in a website, and it's amazing. You can take something good that's good in traditional graphic design and place it into web, and it's excellent. Now, of course, that caught up, of course, but the whole idea of how are you able to not just stand out by like making extreme levels of learning something and becoming the best at that thing. Where can you see are these pockets where something would be surprising? Like, if to me, I take a lot of enjoyment from if you can surprise somebody in some way. So back then, you put like an illustration on on a website. Of course, there were like tons of amazing Flash websites, but that was the thing; they were still like the rare ones. And I think around around 2011, 12, 13, like that's when Flash went away. And then it was like, okay, if you did something with CSS animations or development animation, that was also quite surprising. So fixate on that. And now, I think as things go by, it becomes like increasingly more difficult to surprise in certain areas. But that's where the transitions come from. It's like so to bring it back to like something that makes some sense. It's that I think it's not that you necessarily have to like try to transition into something. It's like where does what you desire to where you want to make an effect on people in this way, what's going to drag you to that point? For the moment, Rive animations can be made with such pace that you can come up with a website that's quite surprising in a way that you couldn't have done maybe with raw code before. And so that's quite exciting right now for me.
Because it's noticing something that you're interested in, noticing that there's a hole or something that's missing, and then filling that need or adding your personal taste and execution to it. And then that changes over the course of time. In this case, it's like as technology is shifting in some ways from Flash to CSS to, periods of time of you doing other things. So going freelance, doing that. And then now this new tool of Rive and all the cool things that you can do with it. And you're so finding the passion and getting obsessed with it is what I took away from what you had just said. Identifying what's missing, what you're interested in, combining the two, and then getting kind of obsessed in a good way.
I want to create something. How do I make that? How do I consistently make that? Because one, it's not an issue, it's a reality with what we do. We do have to work with different partners to create the thing. Generally speaking, you can't create a website all as one person anymore. And um, you can work with great partners, but the more things that you like, the more things you dive into, the more consistently you can achieve that, I think. Um, just one other part that I think is quite important is so I did like front end development from like 2013, 14 until 2017. And one really important thing about transitioning of why that happened is if your clients are ever coming to you and you consistently quite a few times have to say, sorry, can't do that, something needs to change. Like you cannot be in the situation like very often where you're not able to meet what your client wants. And in that case, it was the advent of WebGL, and increasingly because I was doing the development and the design, and I wasn't able to do that. And at that point, I was like, right, I gotta get back to the design stuff only. I knew I was in over my head, and I think that like that's quite an important element of like if because it can be that you're like doing two or three different things, but if that's coming up quite often that you can't do what the client wants, no, you're not. Excuse me. You are no longer fitting the bill for a respectable service. You need to be able to execute the things that you say you're able to execute. you know, and so that's one reason for like moving around a bit.
Yes. Yeah.
How do you find that as a business? Do you feel like you've moved as a business?
That's a really good question. And I think that the thing that I've noticed is getting more specific around the type of service offering and what we can provide at Rogue. So I think that's gotten clearer. And me myself, I only have certain skill sets, which is why I bring in freelancers or different parts of the team to do certain things. I don't code, I don't illustrate, but they're things that I really love. And so my skill set is really just like the way that I think about brands and the way that I think about adapting brands for digital. So we were doing everything from like book design to beer packaging. Now it's really just like we offer branding and that gets translated to digital. With the projects that we do the best are the when you start with a brand and then move it to a website. So I think the service offering has shrunk, the amount of variables has shrunk, but that allows for the expertise to go up opposed to spreading myself too thin. So I think that's how I've adapted as a business is just kind of narrowing the field of vision so that we can get really, really good at a couple of things opposed to trying to like do everything.
It's a really great point. It's like I think the saying "Jack of all trades, master of none" really is quite apt, actually. Do you miss the print?
No, it drives me nuts. Too
I
many
miss. I miss. Yeah, sorry, go on.
no, just too many things to go wrong, like a
Yeah.
typo.
But you know what? I really think it has a huge. I think it's got a great advantage later on.
Mm.
Print design obviously had one chance, one chance, and I think that it can instill something that's quite useful. I don't know how you feel with that.
Well, the intense attention to detail and the checking your work, what is it, the phrase like measure twice, cut once, it's very clear and very important. Like you can't have mistakes because that could be like tens of thousands of dollars coming out of like the budget, and you could be liable in some ways, or the company could be liable. So like it's very important to have that attention to detail, which is something that you can get away with not having the same level of craft, maybe, or that same level of detail in other fields.
My first job out of university was it was primarily print, but they did like bits of digital. It was a really positive job for me. It made quite a big difference. But like primarily print, and I was the first print job I ever did was this annual report for a children's charity, and it's like junior designer, less risk because obviously less money, and you base it on a template from last year, and I applied like some illustration style. Anyway, it was nice. It was a nice project. So got it in the print, got it in from the print shop. Smelled the paper, of course. Very nice. First print job. I felt so proud. And then like so this was 2008. Sorry, it was 2000. Yeah, 2008. About November time, and then somebody noticed like, oh, by the way, is the year meant to say like 2006, 2007? Oh, and I was like, oh fuck. It's from the year previous, the template, the template from the last year, and so it was like, oh my god, no! Hey, what's the solution here? And then someone suggested sticker. Okay, get the sticker. Like, so we got applied the thing, sent it where to print, and it's like a load of stickers to stick on all of them. We get them back, nice, same years on them. It says the same years that I'd put on the original one, and I had to get another sticker set. And I don't know how I didn't get fired, but yeah, they obviously this kind of stuff doesn't happen in print design. But they're like, yeah, it teaches you get it fucking right, and like don't make the copy wrong, even in the design, because it can go right through the process without anybody noticing. Man, yeah, but also, yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out was like, do you think that that area of work had quite a positive impact on the kind of work you do now? Because like normally now, I think the trajectory of a company, even like excuse me, I think it tends to be that quite a few people can have not touched print at all in going to digital design. So I'm interested if that you feel that's had like an impact in the stuff you do.
It makes you so much better at typography. And I think that if you have the experience of working in print and seeing how like your design on the screen translates to differently when you print it out, and you have to like analyze like every aspect of the type because a lot of it is just words, it makes you look at them more like images. So like, how does this look? Like, what can I do with it? When I play with scale, I feel like it's really impactful on print, obviously in web too, but like you learn like some of those basics of design. And
Something that took me quite a while to get used to when moving from print. I mean, I was probably a little bit less time than you on it actively. Like, had the university, but then it was like maybe 2-3 years of actively being on that stuff before, mainly websites. But like, it took me a while not to use noise on a website, and it's like the texture of paper is like it just looks different to when you see something on a website. Like the texture gives it something. It's so difficult to put your finger on this tactility. And then like I remember like all all the websites in the first like 2-3 years were like noise. First thing you do, noise. Why? It looks so that looks dated now. Like not dated. You still have examples. Noise itself evolves in different ways, but like noise in that way, it's quite large grain. It was like, oh yeah, I missed the paper.
yep.
I'm going to start the next batch off with a question for you, if you don't mind.
Amazing.
Curious, like, do you have something that through your work that you feel you as an end goal, whether it's in the future or like now, or that you want to bring into the world, like not like the execution itself, but like something that you want to bring via the work you do, like
That is a Fantastic question. Maybe you should have your own podcast, Bry, but um,
That would be a disaster. So no.
the thing that I'm trying to do is build a world of better brands. And I think trying to do that through the lens of like making beautiful things, because ultimately I want to leave a legacy of creative work that is engaging and fun and like literally makes the internet a more like enjoyable place to be. And I think some of the things that we've mentioned through the course of this conversation is that there's like this big push for like monetization and functionality and like ever increasing like optimization. And I think that if you step back and you analyze like what's really important to us, often it's not the things that are like over optimized. It's like having a long chat over a cup of coffee or a beer with a friend and that emotional connectivity. So I think I'm just trying to make work that feels emotional, that feels resonant, and that makes people maybe like unexpectedly enjoy their time engaging with that work. So it's not just so boring and drudgerous.
Yeah, like bringing like a positive like reaction from someone, emotional connection to the work. I think you'd like. Do you know the designer Massimo Vinelli? He's got this very famous quote. Sorry, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's like the life of a designer is a life of fight against the ugliness. And I think that that's
Yeah.
like really apt for that, and it's like fundamental part of being a designer. Um, and yeah, making an emotional connection, like something beyond the individual visual project, is a really nice thing to have.
And it's just like a beautiful thing, just like fighting against that ugliness. It's a fun way to make a living, if you ask me.
The only issue with it, I think, it doesn't leave you. I think that I often wonder if this is just something people in our industry say, but like it never leaves me. Like if we're on a holiday, my girlfriend and I, and like we're looking at, it's like it's always there. The search for something around you, like design, typography. You go to Italy, and the numbers are in a beautiful way. It's like sometimes it's like intense as fuck that it doesn't stop. But that's what it is. It's like someone crafted that number, and right now it matters to me. And I feel something from this number on this door. That maybe the person living there didn't ever think about it, but the designer did. And I think that stuff's important. I think for me, the thing, we said earlier, we mentioned about ideas and how an idea can be timeless fundamentally. I think that, and this is something again where the current arguments in the AI versus non-AI sphere kind of disregard is, I think that human creativity has an impact to like inspire people. I think that when you get an idea and you enjoy an idea, I think that can make someone inspired to make something themselves. So it's like, I made something so that someone can enjoy it, but that thing, if they like it, might make them make something. And I think that, like, I don't know, creativity away from maybe necessarily design, or like as a more overarching thing, I think it has an impact on how people feel, like positivity. Why I think it brings positivity into the general psyche of people. And I think if creativity wasn't there, it would just be it would be dark, a horrible, horrible place.
It's moved the human kind of species forward. Creativity, where all humans are creative, and maybe it gets kind of systematized out of us, or through schooling or getting like the correct answers. So we prioritize being right over being creative, but you can be creative and get to the right destination. But I guess to tie it back, Bry, leaving this legacy of work that inspires other work, what inspires you to create?
I think firstly, feeling of when somebody sees or experiences something you've made positively is unlike anything in the world. That's quite selfish goal. It's only one of the parts of it, but that feeling is unbelievable. The other part is like
Yep.
I don't feel so much like fight against like horrible design, but rather that I feel what I want more of in the world. Like I think that what I like, uh, visually speaking at least, and also maybe creatively, like of course there's plenty of it around, but I don't think there's as much as there should be. Like I feel like how is it that yellow is so rare? Like it's a stupid example, but yellow is this rare color. Oh, it means caution. No, it doesn't. It's amazing. Like bring more yellow into the world. Like that's like honestly, it's such a simplistic thing, but I want more stuff to look like what I like, and I'm worried that this sounds a bit like forceful. Oh yeah, things should look the way I like them, and fuck everybody else. But
I don't think it comes from that place though. Like I think as artists, as creative, we recognize that there is a need for something and we fill that need. So we have to create to fill that need. So we recognize that there's a gap or a hole. And this goes for like creative business owners. They're like, oh my gosh, this doesn't exist. I have to make it. They're like, I wish someone else would make it, but they didn't. So I have to do it. I love yellow. I'm going to make things with more yellow. So I think it's like, one, it's okay for it to be like slightly selfish and self-serving, but it comes from a place of like there should be more of this for other people.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And also, like one other underlying thing is just like I like things that are unique.
Yeah.
I realize that I notice it. If there's a movie, we were watching something recently. I can't remember the name of it, but in the credits, every single episode had a different sequence, like a different thing happening to the text. So the logo of the show was the same inside the film, the video. Something would happen like a gunshot, and that would then it would apply like blood or some gun bullets to the text, and then the next episode was completely different, and that was like someone spent time on that. You mentioned before with the sound, and that just that feeling there that something's bespoke, conceptually new. That's like I don't know. There's just a burning sensation to do that. Don't always do it. It's like yeah, it's that's the goal. Yeah, that's the burning desire. Like bring something new, and it's so challenging to do that. It's really challenging to do that. But that's ultimately. I don't know how I would function as a designer without that goal with every single project. That some key element is, well, firstly, that you don't start from something. There's increasingly quite a lot of chatter at the moment about plagiarism, which is a huge shame. Don't know what's happening there. It's just happening the last few years, as in the plagiarism itself. But like the desire to bring something new into this client project, which needs to do well for the client. But it has to be that you're bringing something new in.
Is there any advice for aspiring designers that you would give, or what's one piece of advice that you wish you had received at the beginning of your creative journey?
Something that would have been quite helpful for me at the beginning and would be helpful for a lot of designers. You're kind of told that your entire career that there's this group of companies, your top tech companies, etc., that's the dream, the absolute dream job to have. And of course you'll probably get paid, I don't know, 200k a year. I don't know. I don't know what the numbers will be these days, but and in fact maybe that's terrible career advice because that's quite a good thing to have, I guess. But you're told from the start, like, okay, aim to work for these companies, and not even top tech companies, advertising agencies as well. Back in the day with graphic design, it was always the top advertising agencies. And again, nothing against any specific agency, but I feel like I was led with that, and it was a big part of what was then my, like, was I making what I thought was nice work because I thought it's nice work, or was I doing it because I want to get this job somewhere? To this day, I'm not sure, because now I know that I do have an inner desire to create something for it to be, rather than to get this job. And I can't think about that far back anymore. I'm an old man. Basically, I think that thought that I must try, like, it must work in these companies, is just complete and total shit. And it can have such a destructful, impact on how you steer your career. Because firstly, it will impact the work you're doing, the type of work you're doing. Do you completely lose track of your inner taste that we touched on earlier? Because the taste of a bigger company is never going to match what you have as a personal taste if it's something unique. I also think that if it doesn't work, which for me it didn't, it can leave you feeling like, if it doesn't work for you, that you are a failure. Because you've been told your entire career, this is the pinnacle of your career. This is what you should aim at. You've made it. But you don't like it. Fuck. And then what's left? And then you have to get back down to, what do I like? What do I want to make? What do I want to make? Instead of, where do I want to work? So to base what you do, what projects you do, what the style is, a lot of things can be based on, like, where am I wanting to go as a company? I would say push that out of the view and work on, what do I want to make? Like, I don't think I'm the only one who's probably gone through that path and that kind of struggle, because it really, it can make you feel like, shit, I'm like this, I failed because I don't like this way.
Definitely.
I think we're both at the level where, like, at some point in your trajectory, you think, oh, maybe I can aim at, that. At some point when you're younger, you have that realization. So I'm curious, did that ever come up?
Oh, yeah.
Was that a thing?
When I was coming up, like outside of design school, like I really, really wanted to work for a handful of agencies. Most of them were New York based, doing incredible work, like the Hello Mondays of the world. I applied like a bunch of different times, never got hired, nothing against them. The thing is that maybe I didn't have the skill set, maybe I needed to do more work, maybe I needed to get better. But ultimately, the fact that I didn't get hired led me to start freelancing, which led me into entrepreneurship, which led me to starting Rogue, which allowed me to build the company that I wanted based on the work that I wanted to put out into the world, opposed to what someone else was putting out into the world. And like, they make amazing work, and they're like, it would be really cool to get that experience, but I probably would have ended up at the same destination, just at a different point in time, having gone through that job. So I think ultimately you end up where you need to, and it's important to internalize, like, what is the legacy I want to leave? What is the measure of success for me? And how do I create more of that and get more of that personal fulfillment from my work?
If you're working for a company, you are departing away a bit from what you want to make. And inside somewhere, I know I want to make something that's in my vision. And that honestly makes me feel quite at ease with what I'm doing, actually. That it kind of reinforces why I'm a freelancer, beyond being a guy who just can't deal with waking up at fucking 8 in the morning. You know?
Well, this has always stuck out to me, and I don't know where I heard it, but when you are working a job, let's say like you're part of a company, you are actively working in pursuit of the founder's or the CEO's dream. opposed to if you're working for yourself, building your own company, you're actively working on your own dream. So it's a matter of if you're bought into, really love the mission, are actively comfortable working on that company's dream and mission, or do you need to do it for yourself? And I think that there's different types of people who want to do different things. And I actively wanted to work on my own mission opposed to that of someone else.
I think it can be that those two things like match, but I think it's super, super rare. I think like as a person, if you're looking for a job, you kind of you're searching for that in a way. Like you look at the portfolio, who are the people, maybe stalk them on LinkedIn, and it's like how can I match up what they want and what I want? How do those two things match?
As we're kind of winding down a little bit here,
Nice.
this whole topic touches on what does success mean to you individually? And so I'm curious, Bryan, if you've thought about that, like what is your personal metric or measure of success for your work and life?
So I see work of an artist like Camille Walala, who is my favorite illustrator, and also one called Malika Favre, another illustrator. And a few times I've seen their work, and they do like pieces not just on print, but like on walls and all sorts of things. And I fucking instantly know it's them. It doesn't need to say. I instantly know it's them, and that is the absolute dream. Like the not like take it away from websites or something that you've got a style. They can do a piece of print. They can do a fucking toy, piece of 3D wall piece, whatever. They could design this ring light that's in front of me, making my attempt to look like an Instagram influencer. And the way they did the light around would look like their work. It's so amazing, this skill. And that is why I say it's like nowhere, never going to touch that. I mean, of course, hope so. Hope so. Maybe that's also a bit self-indulgent goal there. But as a designer, that's the absolute goal.
It's like the artist's way.
But you also can't artificially try to make that. You know, you can't say, okay, nobody's done this style because it's absolutely terrible, but everybody will know it's me. Another thing that's kind of like not very easy is doing enough interactive, cool projects that people enjoy to the point where people as a whole feel like websites are an established way to feel like immersed in an experience. I still feel to this day, despite the fact that websites obviously they're like two for a penny, three for a pound, like they're still like not really perceived as something to enjoy. That's where this feeling probably comes from the people like saying, yeah, you shouldn't do interesting, adventurous things. If you made so many cool sites, yeah, no, that's not a metric of success. It's nothing to do with oneself, you
And
know.
maybe what you were getting at slightly before, Bry, is just like helping to establish that creative culture around web design and having it spread so that websites could be deemed as something as like a creative outlet that a company finds essential. And that's a way for them to really emphasize their creativity on their brand as a digital extension of their brand. And I think that ties in line with what I would like to do is kind of like make make the internet more fun. And I think the internet started as like this really amazing magical place where you could think about it and you could make it if you just like put in the time and the effort. And I feel like we've optimized it, we've ads to
Yeah,
everything.
it's so different. It's so different.
And I think by optimizing and taking the soul out of it, you just make it a fundamentally different place that is for commerce and commerce sake. So how much money can I make? How quick can I make it? Opposed to I have this really amazing idea. I want to make it as amazing as possible. And as a byproduct, I'm going to make money because I have an audience who needs this thing because I needed this thing. And I feel like that's a better way to do business.
And the internet is a big part of people's lives. It's not like this little thing that people interact with every now and then. It's this huge thing. To think, oh yeah, this is all not fun. That's crazy. As you were speaking there, I did realize my other metric of success.
Mm-hmm.
When you're working on the project, sometimes it's the case that you're thinking about the project, or you're thinking about what you're doing outside of it, and that's like, it's there, and it's like taking up your mind. But success to me is, I must say, having a family and a girlfriend who knows that an important part of that person, and that's to me success, because it's that this thing does have a genuinely fundamental part of the person you are. It's not just this job. It's not just a job that you can turn on and turn off. It's and that's accepted by the people around you. And I think that I already have that success, fortunately enough, and I think you do too, which is nice. I hope so, anyway.
This has been really, really a great kind of chat, and probably something that has been refreshing for myself and my soul as well. So hopefully you feel the same way. Yeah.
Likewise, I mean, there's a couple of moments in there, and I'm not like joking. Right? It's like, oh fuck, oh my god, that's just like, I know that it can be that something somebody says solves something. This is so powerful, and I know that's the case here. So I'm quite pleased that that's actually caught. So yes, absolutely, it's been an absolute pleasure.
I mean, I'm very appreciative for you coming on and just sharing your journey and this beautiful arc of your career, and the ability to pivot and change and adapt, and this kind of artistic, creative mentality towards design, I think, is what we need more of in our community at large. So it's been a real gift to chat today.
This has been like really a pleasure, Britton, and yeah, I'm so pleased that you asked me on the show. So thank you.
But to the audience, remember that we're all legendary and have an amazing story of our own. So on that journey, take the time to be kind, grind, and unwind, and let's make the world a better and more creative place to live together.
And one last thing for the viewers, because you had mentioned about the Japanese pro wrestling before, and there's something that a wrestler called Antonio Inoki, he's sadly passed away, he says at the start or end of shows, and I must do it because I've had 3 beers. Now it's ish ni san da, but you have to do it together. So it's like it's 1, 2, 3 da, and then it's like ish ni san da. Yeah. So 3, 2. Ish ni san da.
So anyone who speaks Japanese will be like, wow, these guys. But yeah. That's amazing.
Absolutely.
Love it.
All right. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.